If you're a landlord in the province of British Columbia, you have a responsibility to the tenant and to your tenancy in the property that you're renting out to know the rules of the Residential Tenancy Act. And it absolutely blows my mind how many people, whether they are someone looking to buy an investment property or maybe they already own one, how unbelievably uneducated they are when it comes to the rules and regulations of what's in that act to not only protect themselves, the landlords, but also to protect the client, which is fair. Client, tenant, same thing. Anyways, this is part 2 of a video series, and part 1 was all about things I wish tenants knew about the Residential Tenancy Act that would really help them in their day-to-day interactions with the landlord and if they run into any problems. And part 2 of this video, well, it's a lot of similar information to part 1 of the video, but it's dedicated to landlords. Landlords do not deserve to be taken advantage of by tenants, and it is easy to do within the confines of our current system. So today's video is all about things I wish you knew as a landlord. This is going to leave you arming you better to interact not only with tenants, but also help resolve disputes if you find yourself having to vacate a tenant, which is usually one of the bigger issues that you're ever going to have with a tenant because they don't want to leave. So if that all sounds good and you're ready to learn some stuff that you probably didn't know, let's jump into it. Okay, since there is a ton of stuff in the Residential Tenancy Act, this is not a video that is a wholesome discussion on every single thing that you need to know as a landlord when you get involved with a tenancy. That's what the Residential Tenancy Act website is for. But what this video is going to do is going to give you some quick fire facts that you can use to be armed to know how to better support your rights as a landlord when you're interacting with a tenant. These are going to move relatively fast. However, I will provide a link down below this video to the Tenancy Act and the government's website so you can access the full details of the information at any time. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. When a tenant gives you notice to vacate your unit, they owe you 1 full month of notice. This means that if they decided they wanted to move mid-month, the mid-month remaining does not count towards their notice. They have to give you 1 full calendar month. Interestingly enough, this is something a lot of landlords get wrong, is when you give the tenant notice to vacate a unit, maybe it's for owner use, or maybe someone has bought the home and wants to occupy it, you have to give that tenant 2 full months of notice to vacate the unit, 2 full calendar months. While we're on the subject, there is only 2 ways that you can actually vacate a tenant from one of your rental properties. And you want to pay close attention to this because this can cost you a lot of money. In fact, when I say a lot of money, it could cost you up to 12 months of rent if you do this improperly. The first reason you can legally ask a tenant to vacate your rental unit is for owner occupancy. That means either yourself or someone that is in your family is going to occupy the unit that you are currently renting out. Now, of course, you could sell the home and the buyer who buys the home might want to move in as well. That would still qualify as owner occupancy, allowing you to serve a 2-month notice to the tenant to end tenancy as long as you're not in a fixed term agreement. The only other way that you can remove a tenant from a rental property is for major renovations. And we're not talking about little renovations like painting or doing the floors. We're talking about renovations that are so significant that people would not be able to live in the property. Now, the BC government realized that this was a problem. You've likely heard of the term renovation. They noticed that this was such an issue that for you to be able to do a renoviction and give 4 months notice to the tenant, you actually have to apply with the residential tenancy branch and speak with an arbitrator prior to being granted the ability to vacate a tenant for renovations. Since we're kind of hovering on this topic, it's really important to understand that you cannot remove a tenant to charge another tenant for more rent. You cannot do that in British Columbia. In fact, fixed term leases are also kind of not really a thing anymore. The new world of a fixed term lease kind of protects both the tenant and the landlord, knowing that the rental unit is going to be rented out for a fixed amount of time. However, there is no such thing as a fixed term tenancy coming to an end. They automatically carry over into a month-to-month tenancy now. So as an example, you cannot rent out a 2-bedroom condo for $2,000 for 1 year, and after that 1 year, expect that tenant to move out or renegotiate the rent with that tenant. That's simply not allowed. That tenant tenancy will continue over into a month-to-month tenancy, and you are only allowed to raise the rent by the government mandated allowable rental increases. But if you are going to raise the rent on a tenant, you also need to give them 3 full months of notice before you're able to actually apply that new rental amount to your rental unit. Now, let's say after a 1-year lease, you do not decide to enter into a new 1-year lease with a tenant. Well, your lack of doing that does not automatically make it go away. And a tenant might say that, well, we're renewing for another year, we just never did any paperwork. And that's not the case. That tenancy actually renews on a month-to-month basis moving forward, so you could issue notice to move that tenant out for owner possession or use or enjoyment of the property, or maybe someone has bought it, by giving them the full 2-month notice that you're able to do. When entering into a tenancy agreement, you're going to want to make ultra sure that you do 2 documents. You are going to want to do the rental agreement. And as we mentioned, lack of doing a rental agreement in writing does not mean that the rental isn't valid. It just means that you didn't do a written rental agreement. So you've got actually less protection than you would if you had done one properly, but the rules of the Residential Tenancy Act still apply. The other document that you're going to want to make sure you do is something called a condition inspection report. If you try to go after a tenant for damages when they move out of a property and you do not have a signed condition inspection report from the tenant from the beginning of the tenancy, good luck trying to prove any damages and keep any of their deposit money, because it's just not going to happen. You're going to do this exact same document with them when they move out of the property so you can compare them, and now you have written proof of any damages that have occurred in the property since they have been an occupant. And no, normal wear and tear on a property is not considered damage. Picture holes are not necessarily considered damage from the nails they bang into the walls. You have to be very clear on your tenancy agreement about what is damage and what is not. But the one thing I do see a lot of people get wrong is if that tenant occupies your rental space for a period of 1 year or more, they actually have to not only clean the home when they move out, but they also have to shampoo or steam clean the carpets. And you would learn this when you do serve them notice to move out, but they have to be out at 1 p.m. on the last day of the month typically. And that creates some challenges for the tenant that you're just going to want to be prepared for. Really, because they usually will not start a new tenancy until the beginning of the month, which of course leaves them with about roughly 12 to 24 hours of not having a home. So be prepared to have that conversation with them, because it makes it challenging for them. And it makes it challenging for you as a landlord to ensure the unit is clean and ready for the next occupant. The last point I'm going to mention is selling a property. And so oftentimes landlords will just dish off all the responsibilities of communicating with the tenant to the real estate professional. And while that's okay, there's some very key things that I think are important for conversations for the landlord to have with the tenant. Number one, it's really not up to the tenant to be able to restrict access to the home at any point, as long as appropriate notice has been given to show the unit, which is usually a written 24-hour notice. Now, most tenants will be pretty good. They'll agree to having simple text messages sent back and forth the day before the showing, as an example, but the tenant has absolutely no right to restrict either your real estate professional or you from entering the unit for the purposes of showing it to a prospective buyer. Not only that, but they're not allowed to interfere with that process at all. And this could be something as simple as commenting to the potential buyer walking through the home something about the home when it's really not their place to be saying something. If they were to interfere for any purpose, you as a landlord could issue a 1-month notice to end tenancy with cause, because they're not allowing you to try and show and sell the home, which is well within your right as a landlord. Now, that tenant's got some rights too when the home is for sale. As an example, they can request that personal items are not in any of the photography. The realtor is responsible for the complete safety of all of their possessions in the home. And they also have the right to be present. They don't have to leave the home for any reason during showings. They could be really sitting there on the couch just watching and enjoying the scenery. So that's a real quick synopsis of some of the things I wish landlords in British Columbia knew, either before buying an investment property or getting into a tenancy, or even during the tenancy, that could help alleviate a lot of problems. And I'll tell you, the biggest way to alleviate problems is know the rules of the game. You're in the business of renting out property, so you should know what your rights and responsibilities are to the tenant and you should know what their rights and responsibilities are to you so nobody gets offside. We found in this current marketplace, lots of our investor clients are actually starting to offload their properties, mostly because they're probably on variable rate mortgages and they're just finding it way too hard to keep up. Our real estate team services the entire Fraser Valley, but most specifically for anywhere from North Delta to about Langley. And if you have a rental property, you're curious on the value of that rental property and what it might sell for in today's market, there is a link below in the description where you can get access to my calendar and book a time to speak with me, and we'll get you all the information you need to help understand what your rental property is doing in today's current marketplace and its approximate value. For anybody watching this video, please leave a comment below. Let us know if you've got any rental horror stories, or if you've got anything that you think I've missed in this video that could really help either a landlord or a tenant have a better situation when it comes to renting property in British Columbia. We work really hard to make these videos for you guys, so do us a favor, like and subscribe, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers.